Türkiye, or Turkey, has a pretty interesting position on the world stage. Being considered a middle power, Türkiye has had quite a lot of interactions with its immediate vicinity, and in this video, we'll dive into exactly that. Before we go in, Türkiye is a transcontinental country, meaning it geographically transcends both Asia and Europe. Whether Türkiye is European, Asian, or Middle Eastern is a matter of discussion, but it has a strong Turkish identity. It has a population of more than 80 million people with a pretty robust economy despite some issues, and has majestic and also geopolitically significant cities like Istanbul. Therefore, the claim that Türkiye is just populated by cockroaches is just Greek and Armenian propaganda. Just kidding. Unlike in the videos last year, this video will focus on each region of interest. Historically, Türkiye had a significant footprint in the Balkans since much of it came under the control of the Ottoman Empire, as it was the battleground between the Habsburg monarchy and the Ottomans. But as the Ottomans and Habsburgs were becoming increasingly plagued by issues, many of the respective ethnicities in the Balkans started to develop their nationalism in hopes of becoming independent. As these ethnicities formed their own nations, Türkiye today is not as involved as with the other regions, which I'll discuss later, but it still keeps an eye as many countries here are EU member states, which Türkiye has been aspiring to join since ever. Even today, it has a little bit of territory in the Balkan Peninsula. The most notorious relationship Türkiye has in the Balkans is with Greece, as the relationship dates back thousands of years. In fact, during the wars against Persia, the Byzantine Empire and the Western Turkic Khaganate were even allied at one point. Turks and Greeks would come to blows when the Seljuks invaded the Byzantine Empire and the Turks settled Anatolia, and this continued with the Ottoman conquest of Constantinople and eventually the Greek areas. Then the Greek War of Independence and the subsequent wars between Greece and the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish War of Independence, wherein Greece failed to realize the Megali idea, the subsequent population exchange, the invasion of Cyprus, and the recent geopolitical and maritime tensions between Greece and Türkiye. There are several ups in the relationship, like during World War II, and when they are both suspicious of commies. And many Greeks and Turks appreciate the other countries and even make families. To be frank, they have such a notorious love-hate relationship that some of them insult each other in a Chad manner. Türkiye also has historically complicated relationships with other Balkan states. With Bulgaria, the only other Balkan country besides Greece to share a land border with Türkiye, they came to blows when the Bulgarians rebelled against the Ottomans and during the Balkan Wars, although they were allied in World War I. Today, they generally maintain a cordial relationship, and the Turkish minority in Bulgaria is a major discussion in their relationships. Türkiye had also historically influenced countries like Albania and Bosnia culturally and religiously, bringing Islam to the region. Türkiye was also seen as a counterweight to countries like Serbia and Greece, as Türkiye is generally more sympathetic to Bosnia and Albania. Although with Albania, there were some historical issues, especially during communist ties. With Serbia, both countries seek to cooperate and improve ties, but Turkish support for Kosovar independence isn't exactly a good look. Türkiye fares better relations with North Macedonia due to historical and cultural bonds, and they generally back Skopje over the naming dispute with Greece. there are also many ethnic Turks living in North Macedonia. Türkiye also continues to maintain cordial relations with other countries in the Balkans, like Romania, Croatia, and Montenegro, and they strive to expand ties. The relationship of Türkiye with Cyprus depends on what entity is referred to in Cyprus. If it's the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, then it is the most supportive of it in the world, and that is because Türkiye is the only country to recognize Northern Cyprus as a sovereign country. If it's the Republic of Cyprus, Türkiye does not officially recognize it, and it refers to that as the Greek Cypriot administration of Southern Cyprus. It has been that way due to history. Cyprus was a British territory, and it later gained its independence, with Britain maintaining some bases. The predominantly Greek population of the island wanted to join Greece to the process known as enosis, but the Turkish minority does not, and things escalated to the point of inter-ethnic violence. In 1974, Türkiye invaded Cyprus and captured most of the north. Eventually, the Turkish Cypriot administration declared independence as the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, and it was not well received by the international community, especially the Republic of Cyprus, except Türkiye, who immediately granted its recognition. The ongoing issue in Cyprus continues to be a sensitive one on the island, as well as in Türkiye and Greece. When it comes to Ukraine, Türkiye had a lot of contact with its northern neighbor for a long time, since the days of the Ottoman Empire and the Crimean Khanate. Before the 2022 escalation to war, Türkiye and Ukraine had been cooperating more, especially with military matters, due to the both countries' suspicions of Russia. In fact, both Ukraine and Türkiye are strategic partners. However, when it comes to the Russo-Ukrainian conflict, while Türkiye is supportive of Ukraine, it is also careful not to upset Moscow too much. Türkiye has a very long history with Russia, characterized by periods of cooperation and conflict. One important thing to mention in the relationship is that Russia historically lacked major ice-free water ports, and they need some to expand its naval hegemony, since naval power equates to power. The Russian Empire sought to dominate the Black Sea, which was then considered an Ottoman lake due to its immense influence, which was a major obstacle to Russian naval aspirations. And eventually, Russia and the Ottoman Empire would come to blows many times. Also, Russia sought to expand its influence in the Balkans, and they seek to control Constantinople to solidify itself as the Third Rome, a direct successor to the Roman Empire. Also, the Turkish Straits provide entrance to the Mediterranean Sea and eventually to the rest of the world. That doesn't go well with the eventually weakening Ottoman Empire, so they fought many times until the end of World War I, which saw the collapse of the respective empires. The new Soviet Union and Türkiye initially had a warm relationship, but when World War II ended, the Soviets made territorial claims and had disagreements on whether the Soviet Navy would have access to the Turkish Straits, which forced Türkiye to join NATO and align with the West. Today, Türkiye and Russia are strong partners in some aspects, such as energy, trade, and tourism, as Russians generally love Turkish beaches. However, both countries are not on the same page with several geopolitical issues, such as the Syrian and Libyan civil wars, the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, the Kosovo conflict, and also the conflict in Ukraine since 2014. With the recent invasion of Ukraine though, Ankara tries to mediate and is pushing for a peaceful resolution, but it's undeniable that Ankara has been careful to prevent backlash with its foreign policy. Türkiye also keeps an eye on the countries in the South Caucasus, since it shares a land border with all of the countries in the Caucasus region: Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan, and Turkey's relationship varies greatly with each country. Starting off with Georgia. No, not this one. Yes, that one. Both countries also had a lot of interaction, particularly in the autonomous Adjara and the historical region of Lazistan, where the ethnic Laz people live. Turkey generally backs Georgia with Abkhazia and South Ossetia dispute, and both countries generally maintain cordial ties. Georgia is also important to Turkey as the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline goes through Georgia. Disputes do arise, such as the growing Turkish influence in Batumi and Adjara as a whole, and historically when Georgia was part of the USSR, Georgia laid claims to Turkish territory after World War II with Stalin's backing. Things get a lot more complicated with Armenia. In fact, no official diplomatic relations exist between Armenia and Turkey. The reasons are mainly historical, dating back to the Ottoman rule under Sultan Hamid II, as it was during this period when he saw a rise of spectacular Armenian nationalism against Ottoman rule, and it was this period when it saw heavy repression and butcherings of Armenians under his rule. That wasn't the main event, because during World War I, a certain event led to the depopulation of Armenians across eastern Anatolia. You probably know what it is already, and Turkey denies that, and it continues to hamper Turkish-Armenian relations today, which actually don't exist at the official level. When Armenia was briefly independent at the end of World War I, they laid claims to much of eastern Anatolia with support from Woodrow Wilson. However, Turkish victory in the subsequent war with Armenia secured the Turkish hold of eastern Anatolia. Turkey was one of the first countries to recognize Armenia when it regained independence, but relations soured immediately and their common border was closed. There were attempts at normalization, but both countries still see each other as hostile, especially since Turkey supported Azerbaijan in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Speaking of Azerbaijan, both countries have a very strong relationship and is often described as one nation, two states. Also, it may not be obvious, but Turkey shares a short 17-kilometer long border with Azerbaijan's Nakhchivan exclave. Their closeness is mainly due to ethnic ties, as both Turks and Azeris are Turkic peoples. Turkey and Azerbaijan are fully supportive of each other from matters regarding Nagorno-Karabakh, energy, military ties, and more. They continue to be close partners and fierce brothers. The geographically Asian part of Turkey generally falls under Western Asia, to which most of the countries in the Caucasus also belong. Although many people do not agree whether Turkey is a Middle Eastern country, do not refer to Turkey as an Arab country, though that is a no-no. Anyways, this section will scrutinize Turkey's relationship with its neighbors in the Middle East. Like with the Balkans, much of the Middle East had either been under the subject of the Ottoman Empire or had had a lot of interaction with them historically. Starting off with its immediate neighbor in the south, in Syria, Turkey shares its longest border with a predominantly Arab nation. They certainly had a lot of historical relationships due to the simple case of proximity, especially when it was part of the Ottoman Empire. But the calculus changed when the French eyed up the region and eventually created the French Mandate of Syria. Initially, the French wanted much of southern Anatolia, but the Turks were having none of it. When Syria eventually gained its independence, its relationship with its northern neighbor isn't exactly the best, mainly due to issues concerning the Turkish annexation of Hatay province from the French Mandate of Syria in 1939, water disputes which concern water rights in the Tigris-Euphrates river system, the PKK or Kurdistan Workers' Party, which Ankara considers a terrorist organization, and most significantly, the Syrian Civil War. Prior to the war, Syrian-Turkish relations were actually improving to the point of military cooperation, but well, the civil war changed the entire geopolitical reality. Oh, and Turkey currently has the biggest refugee population in the whole world, thanks to Syrian refugees. Today, Ankara continues to back the Syrian interim government against the Syrian government in Damascus, and they continue to control chunks of Syrian territory in the north. Fun fact, the tomb of Suleiman Shah, owned by Turkey, was relocated 3 times within Syrian territory, all relocations closer to the Turkish border but not inside Turkey. Turkey also shares a border with Iraq, since it was part of the Ottoman Empire. Turkey generally has a roller coaster relationship with its Iraqi neighbor. Historically, Iraq came under British control. There was an immediate dispute with the city of Mosul, which Turkey claimed, but in the end, they only got a fraction of Mosul's oil revenue. Both countries cooperate in terms of commerce and several key issues, and Turkey strongly prefers a stable Iraq with territorial integrity. However, as we all know, Iraq is generally not a country that we associate with stability, and this has caused issues with Ankara. During the Iran-Iraq War, Turkey generally backed Iraq, but when the Gulf War and when the 2003 American quote-unquote Operation I'll Give You Freedom occurred, things became a lot more complicated because of the Kurds. Turkey has been experiencing a Kurdish insurgency by the PKK and other Kurdish insurgent groups, which Ankara had sought to end, and they have fears that an independent Kurdish state in Iraq would encourage even more secession from the Kurds living in Turkey. As a result, Turkey continues to have a military presence in Iraq to ward off PKK militias, but some in the Iraqi government are not exactly keen on the Turkish military presence. Turkey also has its own relationship with the semi-independent Kurdistan region in Iraq, and is generally as complicated as the central Iraqi government. They do have strong trade relationships, especially with the energy sector, but Turkey does not support an independent Kurdish state in Iraq. But the Kurdistan regional government's issues with the PKK militia has got Ankara on their side when situations like this happen. And this did happen quite recently. Turkey also keeps an eye on the Iraqi Turkmen or Turks living in Iraq, which historically had not been treated well by the Arabs since Iraqi independence, and to some extent, Kurds. Due to the close ethnic bonds, Ankara has sought to support the Iraqi Turkmen in Iraqi affairs. Overall, Turkey continues to support the integrity of Iraq, but at the same time, they capitalize on Iraq's weakness and advance their own interests to safeguard their southeastern frontier against any potential and actual threats coming from Iraq. Turkey also shares a border with a fellow Western Asian country, Iran, which is considered by many to be part of the Middle East. Historically, the Ottoman Empire and Iran were fierce foes, and they fought a lot of wars. Today, they have a complex love-hate relationship. On one hand, they are strong economic partners, find a common ground against terrorism, enjoy good tourist relations, and are on the same page with several geopolitical issues such as the Qatar diplomatic crisis and matters regarding Kurdish separatism. However, they are fierce rivals for influence in the Middle East, especially in Syria and Iraq. Iran is also wary of pan-Turkic sentiment supported by some in Azerbaijan and Turkey. While Turkey is part of NATO, and even though it has its own issues with Western countries, it still has strong military ties, especially with the US. Somehow, there are periods when they are with each other, such as when Tehran condemned the 2016 coup against the Turkish government, while Ankara condemned the assassination of Soleimani in 2020. What is certain is that both countries have very extensive cultural and historical relations. Turkey also has relations with both Israel and Palestine. Turkey was actually the first Muslim-majority country to recognize the State of Israel, but it also supports the Palestinian cause. Israel and Turkey share strong ties before everything took a hit with the escalation of the Gaza conflict in 2008, in which Ankara strongly denounced Israel and the Gaza flotilla raid. Since then, they strive to normalize ties again, but there is still a mutual distrust between the two. Nevertheless, they still share strong economic and touristic ties. With the State of Palestine, Turkey supports its quest for self-determination by providing humanitarian aid and diplomatic support, including Hamas when Turkish-Israeli ties plummeted. Turkish President Erdogan himself is vocal about the issue in Palestine. With the GCC, known as the Gulf Cooperation Council, Turkey's relations vary. When it comes to Saudi Arabia, they generally have a very complicated relationship, mainly due to the rivalry of leadership in the Islamic world, the perceived neo-Ottomanism in Saudi Arabia, and clashing interests in Libya, Egypt, Sudan, Qatar, and even the Caucasus. However, they don't exactly like the Russian involvement in the Syrian civil war and Iranian influence, and they are major economic partners like most other Turkish neighbors. Still, they generally view each other with suspicion, especially when Saudi Arabia look to other perceived Turkish foes like Greece and Armenia. Similar relations are also observed with the United Arab Emirates, where the UAE and Turkey share very strong economic ties, but they are also at odds on several geopolitical issues in Egypt, Qatar, Syria, Yemen, and yes, the Caucasus, specifically Armenia. Turkey maintains generally good relations with other GCC countries like Kuwait, Bahrain, and Oman, and especially with Qatar, where there is currently an active Turkish military base, and Ankara strongly supported Qatar during the diplomatic crisis with its neighbors. And unlike with Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they found themselves in the same page with geopolitical issues in Syria, Libya, Egypt, and also with internal issues. Turkey also has ties with other countries in the region, like Egypt. Egypt has an interesting spot in Turkish history, as the Albanian Ottoman governor of Egypt, Muhammad Ali, waged war against the Central Ottoman government and expanded Egyptian influence in the region. Relations can be good at times, such as when Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi was the president with strong backing from Erdogan. And it can be really strained at times, such as when Morsi was removed and the new Egyptian government wasn't exactly keen on Ankara due to its support of the Muslim Brotherhood. Like with most other Arab countries that Turkey has had a strained relationship with recently, they both try to settle their differences, but they still have mutual distrust and suspicion. Turkey also has its eye on Lebanon, mainly to keep track of the ethnic Turks living there, and to keep Iranian influence away from Lebanon. However, the Lebanese famine during World War I caused historical disdain among the Lebanese population since it was part of the Ottoman Empire. Ankara continues to observe the other countries in the region like Yemen and Jordan, with which the latter has strong historical ties. Aside from its immediate neighbors, Turkey also has extended relations with some distant countries that have had historically a lot of interaction. Turkey continues to eye up North Africa since much of it had either been influenced or controlled by the Ottoman Empire. Countries like Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia, Turkey continues to have a cordial relationship with all of these countries. Tunisia particularly has brotherly ties, and even their flags look similar. When it comes to regional conflicts like Western Sahara, Turkey prefers a resolution instead of direct interference. Things are different in Libya, mainly due to the civil war. During the Second Libyan Civil War, Ankara strongly backed the UN-recognized Government of National Accord based in Tripoli to the point of military intervention. They also did this to secure their maritime interests, since the geopolitical competition in the Eastern Mediterranean is fierce, with parties like Cyprus, Egypt, and Greece competing with Turkey. Geopolitics aside, both Libya and Turkey also share deep historical and cultural ties, with Libya being an integral Ottoman territory until the Italo-Turkish War. Moving on to Central Asia, which is generally considered the homeland of the ancestors of today's Turkic peoples. Due to the strong ethnic bond, Central Asia is considered to have a special space in Turkey's identity. However, historically, Russia was the hegemon of the region, and only after the independence of Central Asian states is when Turkey can pursue its own goals in the region. Turkey generally seeks to develop strong cultural, trade, and bilateral ties in the region. It particularly has a growing relationship with Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, where Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan are seen as major Turkic nations and are trying to reach out to any potential partners other than Russia. Turkmenistan is the closest, as Turkish and Turkmen belong to the Oghuz subgroup of Turkic languages, and even the proposed Trans-Caspian energy pipeline that would connect Turkmenistan's vast energy deposits to Azerbaijan and Turkey was considered, only thwarted by Russian and Iranian objections. Turkey also maintains generally good and cordial ties with Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. Right now, Central Asia is a battleground for geopolitical influence, with regional powers such as Turkey, Russia, China, Iran, and Pakistan trying to gain influence in the region. However, the Turkic bond is strong and pulls Turkey in the region, and even some pan-Turkic nationalists call for political unification between the various Turkic nations. Today, the Organization of Turkic States, formerly known as the Turkic Council, is an active Turkic international organization among Turkic countries that aims for deeper cooperation between the member countries. Just nearby the 5 Central Asian countries, Turkey also has significant relations with Afghanistan, and it particularly has good relations with the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, as Turkey has a very positive reception among the Afghan population, and this goes into history as well. In fact, Afghanistan was the second nation to recognize Turkey in 1923 after the Soviet Union. They were also big fans of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, and in fact, it was the only nation apart from Turkey to have kept its flag at half-mast when Ataturk passed away. Before the Taliban takeover, Türkiye supported Afghanistan through military and cultural means. When it comes to Pakistan, Türkiye shares very close relationships with it, sharing very close historical, religious, economic, cultural, and military ties. In fact, both countries, along with Azerbaijan, are considered to be the three brothers with high respect and strong friendship with each other. Türkiye fully supports Pakistan on its issue with India over Kashmir, and Pakistan is fully supportive of Türkiye's geopolitical maneuvers, as well as its close friend Azerbaijan with the Nagorno-Karabakh dispute. Many Pakistanis are actually strong supporters of the Ottoman Empire and are fully supportive of Erdogan, and they look upon Türkiye for inspiration. Not all is positive though. There are some issues, especially with Pakistanis residing in Türkiye. However, with the geopolitical atmosphere becoming increasingly hot, Türkiye and Pakistan will most likely continue to be strong partners and buddies in the future. Overall, Türkiye's reach is wide across different regions with varying levels of relationships, from brotherhood and friendship to mistrust and hostility. It is a major player in its immediate vicinity, which is attributed to its high population, a dynamic economy, and its application of soft and hard power in foreign policy. Also, major events within Türkiye's vicinity, whether any instability in the Middle East, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, or even the turbulent politics in the Balkans, affect Turkish interests at home. And that is why Türkiye is always on the lookout for its neighbors to secure its own homeland. After all, it is more desirable for a country to influence its neighbors rather than let your neighbors influence you. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe for more country neighbors. There's actually a Turkish city called Batman